Okay, roll call. Smith,
Here.
Rose,
Here.
Irving,
Here.
Green,
Here.
Ursano,
Here.
Senstrom,
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Rose is with us via Zoom this evening. Council, do we have any additions, deletions to the?
Oh, the echo.
Oh, we got a delay going.
I know our live stream is going, oh.
Okay. For those of you that haven't been here in a little bit, we're on YouTube live stream. There's a camera in the corner there, so. Is the echo gone?
I think so.
Okay. Any additions, deletions to the agenda this evening? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve the agenda as accepted or as
Second.
presented, sorry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Do we have Lynn unmuted or is she unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay,
she-
I
she
didn't-
said she-
I didn't-
Yeah.
I didn't
Yep.
hear. Okay. All right. Announcements this evening. We've got, I'm not sure, is Josh here this evening from Murray's? Oh, there you are. Yeah, if you'd like to approach the mic.
Hi there, good evening. Josh Metcalf, District Manager, Murray's Disposal. Just joining tonight to share details on the 2023 rate adjustment. Per the agreement, this year's adjustment is a two-part adjustment based off of the increase in the disposal fee at the landfill. The tip fee per ton at the landfill is increasing by just shy of $5 a ton. And then in addition to that, the contract calls for 80% of the change in the consumer price index. The consumer price index for the period was 8.93%. 80% of that is 7.15%. All told, for our most frequently utilized service level, this year's adjustment will be approximately $2.40 per month. With that, I'm happy to take any questions council may have.
Okay. And the percentage rate is based on Pierce County.
It's based off of the Tacoma, Seattle, Bellevue, which is the local geographical index.
Rate index. Okay, perfect. Okay, questions, Ron?
Thank you. On CPI, I did some digging in on that for another reason earlier today, and you're exactly right. Who sets the tip fees? It's the county, because that's where we go.
Correct. Pierce
So their-
County
their
sets the
increase
tip
is
fee.
2.7.
The Pierce County Solid Waste sets the tip fee.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns, anything?
If
Marvin?
all of our utilities were as reasonable as our garbage is, we'd be in very good shape monetarily.
Yep.
I mean, I keep track of them every year,
Yes, sir.
and so I've got a good idea of how much you do. No complaints.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
All right. All right, anything else for Josh before? All right, thank you for the
Thank you.
update. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Thanks, Josh.
Great evening.
You too. And Mr. Garland.
Hi, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Mel Garland. I'm the chair of the planning commission. And the reason I'm here tonight is to present the work plan for the coming year for the planning commission. And I believe all of you probably have a copy of it. If so, I don't think I'm going to run through the whole thing unless you'd like me to. And just answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and if there's any part in there, we can read it if need be, but I think that's. a good idea.
Most of our work this year is going to be on the comp plan, of course. There's various elements that we're responsible for and that others are responsible for. And
Mhm.
it's our responsibility to put it all together and make it work. And then, of course, it's up for council review after that.
Correct. Marvin, can you hear okay?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. Okay, yeah, and then, so for those of you that don't know, the comp plan is a long process for internally, but it's gonna set the forecast or the outlook for the next 10 years, what we're gonna be doing in Buckley. So it's a large project with a lot of unknowns and
There are a couple things that I'd like to just touch on that are kind of unusual.
absolutely.
We're looking at creating wildlife habitats and reserve areas for corridors for wildlife here in the city. As you know, we do have quite a bit of wildlife floating around and we'd like to keep it, you know, so there's various strategies for that we're looking at, and I haven't really arrived at anything yet, but you'll be seeing that on your agendas, I'm sure. And of course, the I don't know if you guys have passed the sign code or not. I don't know.
Tonight we're working on.
Oh,
it. Yep.
okay. All right. I thought that it was coming up here soon, but I didn't read the agenda, obviously, but I'm glad that you are. The main point in it is just making sure that all of our signs are uniform and meet with an accepted norm, you know, so. Most of the rest of this is comp plan all the way through. And then, of course, if the council has some priorities that, you know, arise, they do. We'll be looking at those, of course, on a priority basis. So.
Yep.
That's about it.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mel?
I'll
Marvin?
make a comment about wildlife corridors. We lost that with Perkins Ferry #1. Because we tried to get wildlife corridors in, the hearing examiner said they weren't included in the comp plan. And so basically, the wildlife got the shaft.
Yeah.
So good luck if you can do something.
Well, we've got some ideas, so hopefully we can come up with something, but
We have
No promises
much
yet.
better thing to work with before.
oh, we did, no
Yeah,
doubt.
about
Yeah.
400 or 500 houses better.
Yeah.
Okay, any other question?
Sorry, this is my voice. What is transfer of development rights strategies mean?
Well, it's a concept of people trading their development rights and in return they get traded maybe to a different site or something like that, and then we can reserve that site.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
And it's part of the wildlife corridor thing.
Brandon?
One thing I was wondering if we could put on here, maybe for a study session, and Emily, I've pestered you about this, I'm sure, is getting some kind of overview for the council of that nice, beautiful, multicolored zoning map, seeing what is currently in development, what is not, and what's left, and kind of a growth assessment of what that looks like for our future.
And absolutely, we can do that. There was plans of doing that sooner, but your agendas have been so full that yes, we can. We can let you know what's going on right now, what's gone on recently. Some of these maps have come to you and some of it has come as text form, but maybe we could have an opportunity to go, well, here's where we're at now. Which is a very different spot than it was 1 year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Ever changing. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thanks, Mel. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, public comment, which we'll have at the beginning here and then again at the end of the meeting. I'll just run down this if you'd like to speak, you can just come to the mic and state your name and address if you choose. Janice, I think Jones, is it? James, sorry.
I'm a little nervous.
Oh, don't take your time.
Mayor Burkett and council members, thank you for allowing me this time. The Buckley Senior Center is a thriving community of our senior population, well attended by our seniors here and in many from nearby communities. They come because they have heard that our senior center is a welcoming and safe place to meet with other seniors and to participate in activities and socialization, which is so critical to the senior population. My understanding is that during this meeting, the council will be making decisions about reallocating some of the ARPA funds currently in the city of Buckley coffers. I would respectfully request that the $41,808 currently earmarked for the senior center be maintained for the following reasons. The senior center is in great need of updating our 2 bathrooms to fit ADA standards. Some of our seniors have health and physical limitations make using our current bathrooms a hazard. Our 2 freezers are extremely old, making them inefficient and unreliable. Similarly, our refrigerator also is very old and unreliable and needs replacing. Since these appliances are used daily, their reliability is crucial to the health of our vulnerable senior population. The dishwasher, although only 3 to 4 years old, has had many hands trying to fix it to make it run more efficiently and to stop the incessant leaking, all to no avail, and it needs replacing. I don't know the exact date of the senior center flooring in the 2 lobbies and hallways and 2 offices when it was installed, but it is so old that it too poses a health risk for our seniors and needs replacing. Mayor Burkett and council members, I thank you for your time in listening to our concerns regarding the building in which we meet and socialize daily, and ask for your consideration as you make these crucial decisions about the allocation of the ARPA funding. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, can you just see your name?
Oh, yes,
Full name?
Janice James.
Alright.
I live on Collins Road.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janice.
Thank you.
Oh, Marvin, or I'm sorry, not Ron.
I want just to say I grew up on this plateau. My paternal side of my family was from Buckley. I have a very great appreciation for the senior center. It's always been a thing. And it's always going to be a thing, and we need to make sure. I will not support any reduced funding for the Buckley Senior Center. Or any improvements.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Anybody else? Before I move on to the. Okay. Connie. You can beginning or end, either or both. Beginning here or at the end or both.
We'll see how much I get done here.
Okay.
My name's Connie Bender. I live at 1915 Ryan Road here in Buckley. The first thing I wanted to get out here right away was on our ordinance B, amending BMC 20.08.030 delegate major development permitting. I read through it. And I'm really hoping that the council thinks long and hard before they pass this. Because basically you'll be down to residential clusters and what's the other one? And rezones. I don't feel that that's what the citizens of this city voted you in for, to not have your hand in just about everything. Without it coming to council, excuse me, it makes it really hard or impossible. Number one, you won't know what's going on in the city. And number two, neither will the citizens. So there's going to be things that are happening and passing and never come here. You'll never see it. And that is not the way it should be run. All this time, I understand having to streamline things to a point. But when you take so much away from the council, give them a couple things they get to do, that doesn't help the citizens or this city. It's not what the people are looking for. They're looking for you to do what they voted for, transparency that I know every one of you guys, that's what you ran on. And this is not being transparent to this community. So that's basically all I've got to say on that part. Now, I gave you a packet on this Foothills Trails because things have been bouncing back and forth. Has the parking lot been voted on? Has it not been voted on? Has it been voted on? On April 13th, item number 7, it came to a study session for our transportation. And they said that it was passed. Actually, April 13th, it got sent back to a study session. On May 4th, nothing else was voted on at the meeting about the project. I said on April 13th. If you looked at, I think the report's in here, the bathroom for May, there was no bathroom. It was brought before vote for the council. What the council passed was 5-2, an engineering service contract for Grant Osborne to do preliminary work. If you read it, did not include the restroom, did not include, I think it was just the fountains, the parking lot, excuse me, cost for Foothills Trails parking lot. A complete design submitted by July 30th, 2021. If completed, this work was never brought back to the council. It went in, it was supposed to be back, never saw it. So we have no idea what the complete design submitted in July. And I got looking back, clear back to 2019, when Mr. Weeks was here. And it was brought up. And again, it was for engineering services. And he said, well, no, that passed the parking lot. And he said, you and somebody else voted on it. No, I didn't. I don't remember what it was, for the guidelines, for the design and the sub area. That's all it was for. Yes, there's a little snippet up in one corner by Jefferson's that could be for a tiny little parking lot. 5, 6 cars, half a dozen cars. And now it's grown from that to when Mr. Weeks was in. Mr. Weed, excuse me, was in to 40. Now it's down to 30. And if you look at the other documents, now it's down to 23. We don't know what anybody's doing with this parking lot. The parking lot does not need to be there. It is going to be a right-hand turn out onto 410. Well, that's great if you live in Enumclaw and you use the parking lot. But if you live in Bonnie Lake or going to Bonnie Lake, you have to go down to Main, turn on Main, turn on River, go all the way down to Ryan, and either go straight across to 112 or get on 165, back up to 410 to be able to make a left ahead to Bonnie Lake. Now, in Enumclaw, if they're coming from Enumclaw, they have to turn on Main Street or Park, whichever, come down, turn on River, go to Ryan, go to 165, go to 410 to make a right-hand turn in that parking lot. Now, I don't know about you guys. I wouldn't do that, not for a parking space. It's going to end up being a white elephant. Nobody's going to use it. Maybe a few might try it at first. I've said it before, and I said it in 2019, the best spot for it, and I gave a map because everybody was asking for it. Down between Ryan Road, 165, and River, there's a spot. We used to park there. And then when they did 165, everybody quit parking there. Now everybody's parking over by Blue Max. Well, that's going to be gone with McDonald's. This would be the easiest to come out. You hit 165, hit Ryan, come right in, 5 minutes, boom, bam, same thing going out. And so this deal of always saying this thing is passed, what has passed is engineering services. Yes, we want to see do the engineering services, bring it back to the council, let the council know what it's going to cost, what do you think can be in there. Put the bids out there so they can be awarded. None of that's ever come back. These have never been saying, yes, we want this parking lot. Now the bathroom, that was awarded. And I did get the grant, I'm going to call it a grant, for the 75,000 for the restroom. Well, I read it because it was brought up at the last meeting that we have to have the parking lot or we have to give that money back. Well, from what I read, that money wasn't even supposed to be used for the bathroom. It was supposed to be used for engineering services. But if you look at what the bathroom site or the deal on the bathroom, it shows that we use the $75,000 on that. I don't know how that happens or how that goes, but I did not see anything in the document saying you have to have this all together or you've got to give the money back. And it's the parking lot's going to cost $400,000. Well, way back in 2021. So we're looking at what, $500,000 now for a parking lot that's never going to get used. So okay, that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Connie. And did you have something you wanted to?
I just wanted to point out that we do have 3 public hearings this evening in addition to public comment. So for any comments related to the public hearings to be included in that legislative record, you will want to make public comment during those hearing times as well. And if anybody is here to speak during the public hearing, you may want to wait to participate during the public hearing.
Okay. Perfect. And down the list here, Ann Trillinger.
I'm Ann Trollinger. I've been before you before, and here I am again. I'm a director for White River Senior Services here in Buckley. We own 3/4 of an acre next to White River Senior Housing that has 20 units. We are in the process of trying to build 10 more affordable senior units. Our current senior housing has a waiting list of 45. It was up to 54. They had to cut it off at 45 because that's going to be a 10 or 15 year wait. So how many people are going to survive that? Where we are now, we appreciate the money that was awarded to us for consultant fees. And we do have a consultant on board. We've gone for a couple of grants to get some pre-development funding to pay for architecture and engineering. We were not successful with those. We are applying now for a $30,000 loan. But if the council could award us any amount up to that, it would help considerably out of the ARPA funds. Then it's a grant, not a loan, because the loan will have to pay back at some point in time. But we need the architecture and engineering done before we can apply to the Department of Commerce and Pierce County for a grant for construction. So thank you.
Yep, thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Carolyn, you want to speak? Sure. Yep, that will at the very end. Okay. McKelly.
Hello, thank you, Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Todd McKellips. You got real close to that. So I own the farm there, 410, where the old Farm Fresh produce stand was, and just came on down to introduce myself. Where all the tiny homes are. Building Beyond the Walls is an organization I'm on the board of there. Does construction skills training, and the Bonnie Lake Food Bank, the market that is there as well. Just here to introduce the vision of the farm. We are plateau and trying to be a light in the community here and a resource for everyone. So a lot of you might not know what's going on, but we've been able to do kind of a private public partnership and just give people a chance to rent spaces for minimum amounts, and we're putting people before profit, but we're trying to be sustainable as well. And if you're looking for a good mission, we're trying to build the community through construction skills training with Building Beyond the Walls, and it's a great organization. I really enjoy being part of that. But we do construction skills training, but with a component that brings people in together, and you got to get back to your community. You got to do public service hours and that kind of stuff to participate in those training sessions. We're going to be building a shed here pretty soon for one of the Lehigh Low-Income Housing Institute communities to house homeless individuals and stuff like that. My goal is not to house homeless individuals on that property. We have little tiny homes and they act as little Airbnb units and stuff like that. But if you're seeking a good cause, I was told that you might be dispersing some ARPA funds, and Building Beyond the Walls is looking for a covered space to utilize there to keep the stuff safe and dry, and the people and the volunteers. We have been lending one of our facilities, which can't happen anymore because we actually utilize that to construct some of our units there. And so I was asked to come basically say, hey, would you like to disperse some funds for a good cause? That is one awesome cause there. We are looking to put a steel pole building there, but it could start out with just a shelter kind of container kind of shelter kind of thing as well. Basically, sorry, I'm looking at my notes, but the space that we're requesting funds for will allow classes to continue in a safe, dry area. And also that the food bank could utilize as a place to store items and also do their own volunteer sessions and stuff like that. They host events and whatnot, but the Roots Collective Farm, which is the name of the collaborative, will donate the space as well for this project, and basically even some labor and stuff like that to build in. But some of the other needs for the food bank currently, we've allowed volunteers to park on our gravel lot. We're having to utilize that back. So there is going to be a need here pretty soon as well for the market and the food bank to have a gravel lot out front for their volunteers to park in. So I'm not really here to plug their need, but I did want to present that as something that the market is going to be looking for funds for, and just collaboration on with the community itself. So I hope that you see us as a light in the community. If you have any questions, feel free to stop on by anytime. Love to meet y'all. Thank you for your service to the fire department as well. And thank you for your time.
Great.
Thank you.
Todd. Ron.
I just want to follow up and say that while what Mr. McKellips is advocating for is honorable, I support it. The ARPA funds that he seeks are going to have to come from Pierce County, because where that location is in unincorporated Pierce County. It's not within Buckley, and it's not within our purview to award ARPA funds. But every governmental entity that took the ARPA funds can process it the way they have to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay. Sorry, I'm going to butcher your last name. Robert. RACEU, maybe. No.
I'm not sure what I was supposed to. Did I sign up that I wanted to talk?
You said it.
Only if I'm asked to.
Yeah, it says only if asked. So I asked, did you want to speak? We'll have another up.
I'll introduce myself. I live in Buckley at Fish Lake because I'm on 237th. And all my neighbors across the street live in Bonnie Lake. Like across the street, I can stand in between like the middle of the street. I'm in both cities. It's kind of weird. I think it's a place in Nevada that you can stand in 4 states. I don't know how many 4-legged people there are. That confused me. I'm Robert. I do arcade events all over the world. I'm called Sid Seattle. Was working for Sony until 4 days ago, and now I'm looking for. I do competitive jigsaw puzzle events. I've done one in Enumclaw. I've done them in Phoenix and New York. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm not really good with mics. I don't know. I have a team of 70 people that are on the spectrum. We all play arcade games. We love 80s arcade spirit. I'm a big proponent for playing the arcade machines like they're supposed to be. Not at home, not on MAME, not, it's a competitive sport, but it's also spectator. If you have a bar with 2 arcade games and people who are good at the games, highlight that people are playing the games good and people will come to your bar and watch them in person. People haven't really been doing that for 40 years. Because like a lot of the arcade owners are like, well, you don't make me any money. I'm like, I play Cuba for 3 hours on 1/4. If people realize what I'm doing, they watch and they drink a lot more beer. That's about it. If you have any questions, I have business cards and stuff. I wasn't really expecting to. I didn't know what the answer was. So I guess you asked me. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Have a great day.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Samantha Starr. I got that right.
You did, yeah. All right, hi. All right, so my name is Samantha and I live off of 224th, technically Buckley, but I'm behind the Bonnie Lake sign, so I can identify with how he feels. Okay, so I do a lot of different advocacy work. I'm a parent ambassador for the Washington State Association of Head Start and ECAP. I sit on the policy council for PSESD, which is Puget Sound Educational Service District. I'm the secretary/treasurer. I also work on the inclusionary advisory committee with the ELC, Early Learning Center. So where I'm going with this is with the ARP, I feel like I'm in ARP funds, the ARP funds. Oh, yeah.
ARPA.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So if you could at least do me a favor and look into some research and development or work study in regards to moving the ECAP and human services from Wickersham over to the ELC. That would be extremely beneficial. And I will tell you why. I don't know if y'all have kids, but last year the bus route thing was a little different, lack of bus drivers. And I have children that were both in ECAP and Early Learning Center. So I saw both sides of the shortage. White River School District provides the bus transportation for ECAP students, but they cannot claim them. Okay, because at the end of the day, no matter what state funds or federal funds are given, it is that school district's responsibility to make sure that every child in that county is taken care of, or that district is taken care of. Right. So we're spending money on no problem, but it would help, for one thing, if we could combine both of the educational facilities. ECAP is, as most of you know, 20%. You have to be eligible to get into ECAP and Head Start services. We don't have a Head Start in this area. We have an ECAP. ECAP is state funded. Head Start is federally funded. So there's that. That's another thing. We need a Head Start. We got to get funding, guys. And so a lot of vulnerable children and families, right, are in this program. And what's different between Head Start and ECAP versus just the daycare is ECAP and Head Start are very all-encompassing. They help bring the family up. So family support staff will work with families and say, hey, what do you want to do? You want to start college? You want to get your diploma? Do you want to do this? And they set goals with the family to try to bridge them up, right? We're building community. We're strengthening community. Right now, where Wickersham is, you have the portable where the ECAP is. And then there's the health resources or human resources department. There's nothing, they don't have a nurse. There's 2 different classes that go to school there, and then they have their family support staff and their teacher and a 3rd assistant, but there's nothing else. There's nothing to help provide assistance. And although it is state funded, if we were capable of moving ECAP and consolidating back where it was in some way, shape or form, it would help with that, right? And utilize the resources that we have there. Because we're very innovative in White River. I love, that's one reason I moved here is like these schools are great. And we're very, very, I know we can't please everybody. I get that, but for the sake of the argument is we all in our community seem to want the best for our kids. And that's why we pass so many levies. We don't get very much Title I funding at all, not nearly as much as Tacoma does. Okay. So if we were to bring ECAP into ELC, we could increase enrollments for both facilities. There's a lot of children that go to either ECAP or Early Learning Center that qualify for ECAP but don't go. Right? They're missing that connection because they're separated. We would create an additional avenue for state funding for ECAP programs. And if we looked into Head Start, just kind of that's federal funding. So just keep that in mind. There are a lot of grants coming through the state right now, the House and the Senate about providing grants funding because of the learning loss that had happened over COVID. They call it the learning loss, but there's a lot of additional resources for funding and education. And the reason that I love White River is we're very innovative in how we go about approaching how we are going to raise our families. And we have to promote the growth that will sustain us in 15 to 20 years. If we can give every child the ability to be their highest potential and give them the same resources that all the other children get, the potential for what they can achieve is going to increase. Therefore, our community is going to be worth more money. It's going to be more valuable. Everybody's equity will go up. And I also understand that a lot of this isn't known, right? So if you have any questions about anything, I'll answer. You won't understand, but I'll try to segue you there. Okay. And then lastly, this is my kid playing at the ECAP campus. Okay. This is at Wickersham, right? Okay. Okay. They're playing in the space there. Wickersham is a White River School District building. So PSCSD, who runs ECAP programs, subcontracts, they won't put any playgrounds or anything. You notice there's no playground. Sorry. There's Wickersham is a Washington or a White River School District building. So ECAP cannot put any playground equipment there, right? Nor will they, because they don't own the building, right? It doesn't make sense. There is, in this picture, a playground over there outside of the fenced area, but the children can't use that because that's rated for 5 and above. And ECAP serves children 3 to 5. So the kids get to look out at a playground that nobody plays on, but they can't play in it. Once again, ELC has a very nice new playground. And I understand that there's a lot of upkeep that would need to happen in that building, right? To be able to combine it. But I definitely think it'd be something worth looking into. Yes.
Great, thank you. I just gotta cut you off.
Oh, yeah.
We have so many people that have to speak in public meetings. But
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Amanda.
I was just gonna say, you have a really great passion for this. I'm a teacher in the district. Have you presented at a school board meeting? Because as a city council, we're not in charge of that kind of stuff. That's like presenting it to the school board with the district.
Yes. And so my thought process comes with the COVID funding. That because because the bids that ELC are getting for the building they can't afford it. It just is it's unattainable. And ECAP isn't given enough funding through state. So my thought process was, and I didn't know if it was even possible, right, was a way to work with school board to kind of utilize in that's just why R&D, cool.
And Ron. I would just say, as with our last gentleman who spoke, the White River School District is in possession of ARPA funds. And if I'm wrong, city administrator, I believe they have to be spent by the last day of 2026.
Correct.
The White River School District is sitting on ARPA funds. Please go to the White River School District website. Look where the next school board meeting is.
Yeah.
And what you just presented,
present.
general lady, is exactly where you need to present it at.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tiffany, and I'm not gonna even try the last name. Do we have any more than one Tiffany that wanted to speak? No Tiffany? Okay, Amy Boucher. Or you can wait till the end too, if you want to wait that long.
You got a lot of stuff to get through.
Either or, okay. Right, last call for Tiffany, or we'll try it at the end again. I think that's, or anybody else want to speak before we get rolling here? Okay. All right, that'll close the public comment first public comment section. All right, committee reports. We'll start with Transportation and Utilities, Councilmember Arsano.
So Transportation and Utilities Committee met on February 21st, 2023. Our discussion topic was sewer rates. Dominic gave a presentation on sewer rates. The study compared same size cities and rate type used. 12 cities were looked at. 6 cities used flat rate. The other 6 cities used a base rate plus usage. 66% of the residents used 400 cubic feet or less per month. Based on study potential commercial rate increase for revenue. Rate study will be brought to a study session around April 4th. We talked about the Jefferson right away. We may have to amend binding site plan will be brought back to future study session. Restroom was installed last week. Then we talked quickly about the parking lot. Council approved the motion for, I think where people are getting confused was it was approved for design/bid. So that means they could design it, then go out to bid without having to come back for council approval. That was in April of 2021. So then other comments where we talked about the AMR metering. The city is scheduled to upgrade the billing software in March. Once this is done, we can start using the software to collect water meter reads remotely. And then we had a discussion about the contractors leaving steel sheets in the road without pinning or using cold patch around them. And that was a pretty quick meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Questions, comments for Councilmember Arsano? Marvin? No, okay, all right. Let's see, we don't have, I guess that's our last, council member comments and go to the order. Brandon.
I'll keep it quick. So February 16th, we had our PCRC meeting. It was kind of it's the second month of the year. It's still our kickoff month where we do our general assembly. So in that we discussed the 2023 work plan and a couple highlights out of that. Obviously the 2024 legislative priorities, we'll be discussing those at length towards the end of the year. We're going to be hearing from some veterans groups about veterans programs that are available. We are planning on having a presentation about the airport proposals. I know that will be really interesting to hear about that. We're also looking to do an outreach to the absent cities and towns. And so as the vice chair, one of my responsibilities was to do the roll call, and I couldn't help but notice that anyone around us, Wilkinson, Carbonado, we're not there. So I'd like to try to change that and get some more votes that represent our area. We heard from the Growth Management Coordination Committee and the Transportation Coordination Committee about their work program that we'll be working with them, PCRC. They're kind of like our subcommittee. So we'll be talking about housing needs related to HB 1220, periodic comp plan updates, and preparing for the 2024 countywide transportation funding cycle.
Okay.
That's just the highlight. There's a lot more,
There's
but
plenty
a
there.
busy year, PCRC.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Marvin.
Mr. Mayor. This is on you. Next council meeting. Will it be the 1 year anniversary of requesting a breakout of the sales tax income by category. I have still not received that. The council hasn't received that. And secondly, I noticed that in our September 20th council study session, we asked for a breakout of how they plan to finance this boondoggle of a city hall we're putting in down there. And we haven't received that either.
September 20th.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in there.
All right. Okay. Any other council member comments? Go to the order type stuff? Okay. Consent agenda. Engineering services proposal.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we're gonna get into our public hearings, so I'm gonna recess the city council meeting here at 6:48 PM and enter into our first public hearing for sign code. Emily.
Hello, council. I did not bring anything with me, but I think I can actually answer the questions. As you know, we've been working on an update of the sign code for an inordinate amount of time. But we think we're finally there. We think that we have accomplished making our sign code compliant with the various court cases that have come through at the state and federal level. We tried not to change anything too terribly in the sign code itself. And that's why we gave you the staff report at the study session last time that kind of went through what those changes were. I note because I got an email from Downtown Association today that said, are the murals going to be in there? Yes and no. They're in there in the sense that we have exempted them from requiring a sign permit. We did not create a section that talks about murals. That's actually more of a public art kind of a thing rather than a sign code kind of a thing. So other than that, they're not a huge amount of changes beyond what we have now, other than the temporary signs required basically a full rewrite. We tried to keep as close, as to the spirit of the existing sign code as we could, while avoiding those First Amendment violations of having to read the sign or know who the author was in order to administer it. Other than that, we've moved a bunch of stuff around to kind of streamline it and make it easier to understand.
Okay.
But I'm happy to answer any questions or to stand back and let the public make comments on it and then try again.
Can you speak briefly, sorry, to the constitutionality part of it? I know this is
Sure.
the big driver.
That
for
is,
this.
it's a big deal. So Reed versus the city of Gilbert, Arizona was a Supreme Court case that the essential facts of it are that there was a roving church. It met in different locations every week. And so they would put up a sign to let you know where that church was going to be. Well, that violated the temporary sign code of Gilbert, Arizona. And so they said, you can't have those. The church argued all the way up to the Supreme Court level that they were being treated unfairly under the First Amendment. And the Supreme Court found that, yes, in fact, as a city under our mandates, we are allowed to regulate where a sign can go, how tall it can be, how big overall, whether it's illuminated, what the ground cover around it might be, and the general size of font and colors, those kinds of things, but we could not regulate what it said. And that if you had to read that sign, like grand opening, garage sale, a real estate sign, or if you had to know who the author was, the church versus the subway, that you are then violating First Amendment rights. It changed the way all of us do sign codes because almost all of us had grand opening signs, and all kinds of other signs that were very specific to who wrote it, real estate signs, or other things that were identifiers. So what we have done is, as best we can, make it as neutral a language to not avoid or to not create First Amendment violations.
Okay.
We can be a little bit stricter with commercial than we are with non-commercial speech, and there are a few instances of that. You kind of have to decide, are we going to go completely First Amendment neutral, or can we have a little bit of a little bit more stringent on commercial? And there's a few of those, but for the most part, we're trying to strike that balance without having an 80-page sign code like the Association of Washington Cities model sign code is. An impossible and clunky document that I've read multiple times and I'm not sure I could administer.
Okay, all right. And
I could add that, the Reed case came out in 2015, so it's.
I was trying to avoid how long it took us to get it done.
So, I mean, I think, I don't know how many cities have finally caught up with this. A lot of them still haven't. And roughly half or something have gotten around to it. But this ordinance also addresses an older case, which was like in 1980 or 90 or something, Collier versus City of Tacoma, which said that cities couldn't prohibit political signs in public right of way. And our code has prohibited that. And it's always been a problem. And so I'm really glad to see that fixed as well. It's allowed now as a temporary sign. That's why we were real careful about how we wrote that temporary sign code. And so those of you, campaigning for re-election and stuff, make sure you read those temporary sign regulations real close so that Emily doesn't have to piss you off by, removing your sign to the violent.
That is the last thing I would do.
Yeah, so I'm really glad to see that change too.
Perfect. Thanks, Phil. All right, questions, comments, Marvin?
Couple comments. I noticed the Downtown Business Association is planning on putting some murals up. Would they be regulated under this sign code?
No, sir, we have made murals exempt from the sign code.
Thank you. Second, I saw on the internet, this donut shop in New Hampshire put up this, some of the high school kids painted this really neat sign, and it was big. They made them take it down. Now, I don't want to see something like that. As a citizen here, I like to see some innovation too. Everything isn't, it's on this tab right here. And it'll be 3 feet, not 3 feet, 1 inch. We've had a little of that too. And does this have that in there?
There is some flexibility in the sign code, and we have the ability to provide some administrative variances at the staff level. But we have to be very careful to treat everyone the same, particularly under the First Amendment. But
I'm not going to argue that. All I wanted to know is there some room?
We offer flexibility
for innovation
wherever we can, and yes, I do believe that there is some room there.
Okay.
I don't know what the high schoolers did, but if it was a mural, I wouldn't get involved at all.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to keep in mind in the ordinance is that for non-commercial speech, if you're not advertising, basically, if you allow a commercial sign anywhere, you have to allow a non-commercial sign under the same regulation. So since a mural is allowed, if anyone wants to paint anything, as long as it's not an advertisement, basically they're allowed to put up a big picture. They can innovate and be creative. That's all there. I mean, the downside to it is, like Emily said, you have to treat everybody the same. So if someone paints something really ugly, or what some people find offensive in the downtown area, we can't require them to take it down. That's the other
Unless
side.
they're cussing.
Yeah, that's.
We can not, there are certain things that you are allowed to say absolutely no to. Don't pretend you're the police when you're not. Don't put up stop signs in neighborhoods that, aren't ours. Don't cuss a bunch. There are certain just sort of public morals things that work throughout
Yeah.
codes, and this is one of those places.
Brandon.
What is a bunch? So don't cuss a bunch.
Hmm?
Is there like a word limit on the cussing?
No, by a bunch, I meant there's about 8 words you can't say.
Oh.
There's an old George Carlin routine you might be interested in.
Fair enough.
Right. More than a few, but not a dozen.
Not by character either. How many characters are up there? So.
Right.
Okay, other questions, comments, from the council? Anything? Okay. All right, thank you, Emily. We may have you here if there's questions, public comment. We have, anybody want to speak on this? Yes, please come up.
Hi, I'm Lorna Anderson and I live off of Monte Vista, but I also own the quilt shop over here. And in the sign code is not allowing sandwich board signs. Which is okay. I mean, I get it. It looks sometimes a little trashy out there. But I would ask forgiveness on that until you get your wayfinding done. I cannot tell you how many people with my sign out there that are from out of town that come in and say, hey, I seen your sign. I didn't even know the downtown area was here. So we pulled in. So until you get that wayfinding, I ask that you don't remove the business sandwich board signs
Okay.
because it would really hurt us.
You're talking the little A-frame plywood.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Any other public comment? Oh, nope, not Amy.
I told you I would wait. Amy Boucher with the Downtown Association. Thanks for letting me share. I just want to, again, I always feel like I'm thanking you guys for, being supportive of our efforts, helping revitalize downtown. And, when we approached the Planning Commission about trying to get, the murals done, how will we go about this process? And, we met with the Community Service Committee and talked through that. And I think where we're at now, we have a bridge to somewhere, a bridge to nowhere. And so this, removing that allows us to then take the next steps, which will be, I think, in establishing the art commission. We have in art committees, we have subcommittees, and we're focusing on public art and how we can promote and advocate this in the community. Public art for community. And so that's something that we're actively working on. Hopefully within the next month or so, we have some kind of, we're looking to other cities on what their policy and procedures are, contracts with the property owners and to the artists. So this is something, we'll approach Courtney and maybe through a session, a special council session on how we want to move forward with that, because the hope is that we can have some murals and some public art done this summer. And we'll be doing some temporary art stuff at our hometown market this summer, but it would be nice to have a big installation done. And for property owners are already on board and super happy and excited about this. This then will probably tie into potentially maybe the facade grants that could potentially be another area we work together on, because some of these buildings need a little bit of repair on the masonry.
Yep, we got
The
it.
building, yes, before we actually are able to paint the mural. So that's something that I know 2 of the buildings are in the process of. And then we're also looking for other grants, and trying to be self-supporting in that regard as well. So thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks, Amy. All right. Brandon.
Emily, for the A-frame sandwich boards, I thought those were allowed now.
They were allowed before and they still are.
Okay.
It's just that the code has allowed for many, many years A-frames to happen in the downtown historic district where it's meant to be pedestrian scale, but not necessarily out on 410. We didn't change that. The one thing that we did do, and I'm pretty sure I put that in the report, there are some places within the downtown district that do not have direct access to Main Street. So what we did was wrote in basically an exemption that says if you're in the historic district and you want to put an A-frame out on Main Street, you may have one with permission of the adjacent landowner. So we actually created more flexibility rather than less there. But otherwise, the A-frames were always allowed in historic district and still are.
And by adjacent property owner, meaning the side of the street the sign is on,
Right.
for instance.
So-
Which is the city. If
Sometimes.
it's on 410.
Well, but they're allowed here in the historic district. So the best example is Doxa Fitness. There is an A-frame that they have. They're a block off roughly off of Main Street. And if they wanted to put an A-frame up and they wanted to do that on Main Street, they would have to have permission of the adjacent property owner to put that up.
Okay. More flexibility is usually good.
That was the plan. Whenever possible, I attempt to get more flexibility rather than less and less bureaucracy.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Again, last call for public comment on the sign code. Oh. Carolyn?
If it's okay with you, I'd like to address all three ordinances at the same time, if that would save time, or I need to do it one at a time.
I think we need to do it one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so good evening, Mayor and Council. Carolyn Robertson Harding here again before you, 407 7th Avenue Northeast in Puyallup. Here on behalf of the Hosford Construction in support of the sign code. Specific to that particular code, we appreciate the added reference to reasonableness and the purpose section, as well as the additional flexibility given in the commercial zoning to tenants in multi-tenant buildings, like our current project on Highway 410. I had the opportunity to speak with Gene Robertson the other day. I call him Poppy Gene. That's what we call him in our family. And asked him about our project on Highway 410 and whether or not he would give us the opportunity to rename that project Robertson Landing. He graciously accepted that, and so that's what we will be naming it from now forward. And that building is multi-tenant, and it will have an opportunity as a result of this to be able to use that. So that's all I have for now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, Carolyn. All right. Any one more last call. Okay. It is 7:04 and we'll close the public hearing, just this first one, I guess, and reopen. Okay, yeah. And same, so we'll start the next quasi judicial review public hearing at 7:04 and end the previous public hearing. And Emily up again. Oh, Phil, okay.
Okay.
We're doing quasi judicial now.
Yeah. Well, I think you saw the video that I put together.
Yep.
It's just an issue of,
A little closer to your mic.
oh, sorry about that. Yeah, it's, we just had to fix the problem that we were having with, multiple hearings being held on the same development projects, and also taking the opportunity to streamlining it and putting it more at the hearing examiner level so that the city council wasn't kind of stuck with some of these projects. Ideally, if your codes are written well, the hearing examiner is going to make the same decision the city council is going to make every single time. If there's going to be a difference there, that means either that the council is thinking that they can, basically overrule the regs they've adopted, and then a court will overrule them, or the regulations are written badly and they're subject to differing interpretations, So there's, you're not really losing anything by giving it down to the hearing examiner staff. It's because you still make the decision as to what happens in your community by what you put into your development regulations. And that's where all the action is. For example, today I had a big hearing in a city that's about the same size as the city of Buckley for a 400 unit apartment building. And some of the neighbors, were in there saying, well, why is this being allowed in our community? We're a small town. We like the small town character and everything else. And the answer was because the council zoned that part of the city to allow apartment buildings. The council didn't want to have to do that. Actually, the State Growth Management Act said that their city has to accommodate urban growth, and they decided we want to keep small town character in our neighborhoods and put all that growth the state's forcing down our throats, along this major street here. And that's how it happened. But that choice had been made by the council, and I, as a hearing examiner, am just doing what the council essentially put into their code. And so that's really what you're doing with this particular ordinance here, is you're delegating that down to the hearing examiner to essentially do what you wanted him or her to do by putting it into your zoning code and that kind of thing. In terms of, keeping track of what's going on, some cities do require their hearing examiners to make a yearly report, so you know exactly what's being approved and what's not. Or you could just require Emily to give you a report at every council meeting as what projects have been adopted and that kind of thing. And the nice thing about delegating out, this work to the hearing examiners, then that frees you up to be able to talk to your constituents about these projects. Because if you're making the hearings yourself, if you're the decision maker on these projects, you're not allowed to talk to your constituents, until the whole process is over. And that really ties your hands. And it creates a risk to the city too, because if you accidentally talk to a member of the public and they're putting pressure on you and you're trying to be accommodating, be nice and say, I agree with you, this project should be, denied. If that gets out in the court proceeding, the decision's overturned, you got to start all over and pay the developer a bunch of money for what you did there. So that's why most communities on the west side of the mountains have adopted hearing examiner systems and delegate that down. But as I said in my speech, you have a lot of discretion as to how to set this up. If you want to say that the hearing examiner makes recommendations to the city council on these projects and you make the final decision, that's fine. If you want to say the hearing examiner makes a final decision and that's appealable to the city council, you can do that as well. There's all sorts of different ways you can do it. But the way that, like I said, most communities are doing it, especially ones that have been around for a while and doing a lot of these projects, is they have a hearing examiner and staff make these kind of decisions. So, at the very least, we just need to stop having multiple hearings on permit applications. That needs to stop. We got to stop it one way or another. Either have the city council hold all the hearings, or consolidate all the applications into one hearing, or have the hearing examiner do it. So,
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Brandon.
Yeah, I think that what the story that you shared about the small city the size of Buckley that had those issues, the kind of the misunderstanding, I think that we have a lot of that here too, especially when it comes to the quasi judicial aspect of the council and what our duties are. Oftentimes, we hear like, how are you going to allow this project to go through and things like that. And the truth is we don't have a say if it's zoned for that purpose. Otherwise, we're just saying we don't want it because we don't like it. And that opens the city up to liability issues. Believe it opens us up to liability issues as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. And in some cities, it's so bad that if a council is kind of like, we can't allow this in our community, we're just going to deny this. The insurance company ends up going to the city council and saying, if you approve this project, we're not covering you because it's a willful violation of the law. That's how bad it can get. Your hands are really tied at some point. If your code says if it meets the code criteria, it has to be approved, period.
Yeah. I think this ordinance would reduce that potential political pressure that council members may or may not feel to kind of go outside that quasi judicial decision making. I think also that it does streamline the process for applicants. And to speak to Connie's point about the transparency issue, I think we can build a transparency issue and transparency piece into this. But I fully support this.
Okay. Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, Phil's summation was right in line with where we've been in Buckley for quite some time. The zoning, I'll get off here.
I was just going to say, I agree with you. I would like to hear though from Emily, like how will that communication work? Because Connie brings up a good point. We were voted in to kind of make these big decisions, and I get if our code is up to it, we are liable to push it through. But how is that communication going to work so we aren't totally blindsided too? And if somebody asks us, and
I don't want you to be blindsided.
Yeah.
No, and no surprises is important. So there are places where the council still has quite a lot of discretion, and this is where it's important. The legislative decisions for zoning themselves and rezoning, how you set up where you want to go. And a lot of the decisions that are happening now where we're concerned about loss of habitat and whether we have enough of a retail or employment base, or most of those decisions happened forever ago when that zoning was set. So there are several things that I want to be able to commit to the council for doing. One of those is to keep you informed of what's going on out in the community. One of those things is to have you engaged in this comprehensive plan process. It sounds annoying. I know it's a long process. It can be a tedious process. But there's a reason we have so much public engagement and so many opportunities and want to be in front of you. There's a reason that we asked for a planning commission work plan. It was so you know what it is we're working on, and you've had an opportunity to say, okay, we're looking at the comprehensive plan. We know we have this certain amount of growth that we have committed to by state law under the buildable lands program. How do we want that to happen? Where do we want that to happen? So that instead of the temptation in many places is if you don't like a project, to punish the project, and then you're just going to end up paying the developers and their attorneys a whole bunch of money when the courts say that they met your codes, you can't say no. Instead of that, if we're having consistent rezones requests or consistent projects that you just can't get behind, development standards you don't like, those are the sorts of things that council can work on. And I am very happy to work on them with you. And we're embarking on what will be done December 24th or December 31st, 2024. We have to have our comprehensive plan done. In the meantime, you're going to be hearing from the Planning Commission and me a whole lot, because it's time to have those conversations about where are we now? Have we grown past where we thought we were going to be? Does it look like what we want it to look like? Are there things that we are afraid we're going to lose that we should preserve, or things that we have not thought about that need to be added in? That's where we can really make a difference here. And you can feel like you know what's going forward. We can't fix all the problems. We can't fix the fact that 410 is basically built out or will be very soon, at least from Mundy Lost to 165. But we can talk about, do we want an urban growth area? We can talk about, in the eventuality that Rainier School is no longer there, what would we like to see there? What mix of uses at what intensities, what densities do we have the infrastructure in place in terms of utilities and roads? So those are the big fun planner things, but they're also the important things here, because they give you an opportunity to have that say without setting you up in a situation where if you talk to people, you can be in real trouble, real legal trouble. So, and I haven't done a staff report in a while because there haven't been a whole lot of building permits that have come through. It hit a wall in August and hasn't come back yet. It's starting to slowly creep back up. So part of the quiet is that, and part of it is that we've been very nose to the grindstone. We have probably approved a dozen projects in the last 3 months and have several other major ones going. So yes, I want to get you that information. I want you to know what's going on and what's upcoming. And if we can put the decision-making at the legislative level where it should be, and the quasi-judicial stuff, basically, did they meet the code or not, then we should approve it. If they didn't meet the code, can they be conditioned to meet it? If they're causing an environmental impact, can we mitigate that impact? And if not, then we deny. But those decisions are safer at the hearing examiner level. And having 3 hearings for one project, especially when we're talking about a couple of accessory buildings, is just a lot. So if there are regular intervals you want to hear from me, I'm happy to talk to you about it, but you're going to hear from me a lot. If you looked at that planning commission work program, you're going to hear from me a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally the way that zoning process should work from the city attorney and planning perspective is that, your vision, what you want for your communities is put in your comprehensive plan and your zoning code. And then if that doesn't turn out the way you expected, you're gonna have your neighbors talking to you. How could the hearing examiner approve this project or this project? And Emily telling you that too. And if you hear stuff and it's not what you wanted, then you can change the code. That's ideally the way that it would work. And we can change the code real fast under emergency circumstances if we need to.
Hence
I mean, the
next public
projects that
hearing.
get approved, they're done deals. We can't go back, but we can, with an emergency interim ordinance, we can have, that effective the same day it's adopted, saying no more, contractor yards until we figure out where we want to have them or something like that.
Or we are going to allow something in a spot that we didn't think of before. Someone comes to you with a proposal and there's no place in town for it. And whenever possible, when I hear of these emerging issues like the parking code, those are the things that I want to be able to bring to you and go, okay, this is your town. How do you want What do you want to include? What do you not want to include? How would you like to see it grow? We cannot zone, you can't zone it and force them to come, but you can make it available. And there's a lot of other code of, it was last year, I think I gave you a big list of codes that we'd like to work on. Some of those involve these very kinds of decisions. If you're getting projects you don't like, what is it that you don't like about them? Understanding there's some things we can't do a thing about. We still are required to, under House Bill 1220, make room for every type of demographic, and that includes homeless shelters. It includes transitional housing, and that's not necessarily popular, but we don't have any choice. So how can we do that in a way that is that works for us, that works for Buckley, that looks like we want to look, or provides what we need to provide?
I think practically speaking too, the only big change you're gonna see is design review. I mean, in the
Yeah.
last few years that I've been with the council, I haven't really seen anything significant in front of you other than design review. Everything else is already going to the hearing examiner. And I really get the sense from the council review, design review, is you didn't really feel that was something that you need to be reviewing really. So it was usually about windows not being open or closed or something like that, so it's like, that's probably best to be left to the hearing examiner
That comes
too.
up a lot. But and those multiple hearings where once you've already gone through the planning commission to have to come to council, it's by that point almost a rubber stamp, and it's a waste of your time. It would be far better if I could keep you apprised of what's going on, and we could have conversations like, I don't like this because it turned out that way. This new standard, that these design standards that we put in aren't great. Or they're great and we'd like to see more of them, or we'd like to provide more flexibility, or a mix of things. My favorite design standards are quantifiable. Here in my actual, it's crazy, but my favorite ones are unincorporated Snohomish County of all places, because they give a list. You can take the same development with the same 5 models, but have it completely different from block to block, because what they do is say, here's the facade treatment, pick 5 of the 10. And here's the landscaping we're looking for, pick 2 of the 10. And so all those combinations together, like the lottery, you end up with a very different neighborhood that's actually pretty much a lot of the time the same box, but it's more diverse. So it's those kinds of things. If you're not seeing what you want, talk to me about that so that I can then bring it back to the planning commission and we can take another shot at it.
We've got the next over a year and a half to work on the plan for the following 10 years. So the door is wide open for the next year and a half, a little more than a year and a half.
This is the time.
Ron, you had something?
I do. I would say that after a lot of thought and whatnot, I agree with what has been presented by Director Terrell and the city attorney. I mean, I think I'm the only council member currently that's had to recuse himself on something that, if this was not part of it, wouldn't have never had to be. I heard something about political pressure and whatnot, and I'm not saying that I had any, but I definitely could have had some if, and nobody should, we all live in the city. One of these days, one of my colleagues, if we're still doing this, is gonna have to do the same thing. And the other thing is, yes, we can control the code. Recently been reading on social media of, oh my God, why do we need a McDonald's? It's because the person who owns that property that Blue Max sits on and Rainier Fresh and behind it and that corner, he owns it and he can do what he wants with it.
Within the code.
Within the code. We need to take this code seriously. As a council, we're not gonna do it tonight. We need to review our code. We'll decide as a council how we're gonna review the code, but I agree with especially the city attorney, what he said. You set the code. If it doesn't comply, it doesn't comply. And Facebook can just do whatever it wants. I don't care. That's neither here nor there.
And I just want to, Lynn, you can hear us all right. I just want to make sure if you have any comments.
I agree with Councilmember Smith. I think this great potential in the future. Looking forward to it.
Just a minute, Lynn, they're working on the sound.
Oh, we got that echo.
You have an echo. So.
I agree with Councilmember Smith. I think this great potential in the future. Looking forward to it.
Just a minute, Lynn, they're working on the sound. They agree.
She agreed.
She agreed.
I agree with Councilmember Smith.
Yep. Thank you, Lynn. We're on a little time delay here. We're working on the.
That's fine.
Okay, all right, thank you. Marvin.
I was gonna wait for the, when we amended it, but everybody's talking about it. When I graduated from college, there were 4 job offers. The lowest paid one was the biggest company. I asked my professor about that. He said, that's where you want to go. You will learn more. One of the things I've learned in this city, we have a brand new city administrator. She came from a large city. It's like the difference between night and day. And that's what we don't have here. We don't have a culture of people moving up the ladder because they moved someplace else. And we lose that. Where I worked at Boeing, we had experts on everything. It was my job to make sure I found the right expert when we did the 600,000 operations that we needed to build the 747. You know, these are very complicated things. And I'm not blaming our employees. I'm saying we don't have a culture that covers this. We've done a lot of, we've been here for 30 years or so. We've built 2 houses. We've done a lot of other work. We've had some really bad decisions because they could make those decisions and get away with them because of the Supreme Court. Chevron. The expert is the person that is in charge, the staff member. That's considered the expert. It's also considered the expert by case law. I won't run you through the things other than say, in fact, we probably spent $50,000 in covering for mistakes of things we had to cover. And there's some things you just can't cover. But what I would like to see, I would like to see a process, a simple process, where if a person did not agree, they could go through this process and get a decent answer in writing, which is what we were required to do when I worked at Boeing. I could go all the way to the vice president of the company in engineering if I wanted to, if I felt things weren't right. And I went up to the ladder of more than once. But the point being, we need a process along with this thing, because too many times we have bad decisions. Or decisions made. I mean, I know one of them I had, the person who was running the department had been instructed to watch him, to be sure he dotted every I and crossed every T. Because you can smell it when you talk to them, when they're unwilling to say, oh, this is what it is.
Okay.
And so before I would approve this, I would want that appeal process, and a simple one. I don't think you should have to hire an attorney or anything like that. I think you should be able to say, who runs this, who appeals it?
Okay.
Because we had an appeal process. And rarely did the first level guy get turned over, because he had the benefit of the culture and the training to get there. I mean, I just feel sorry for people working in small places. I worked for a small company. They could not understand how someone could come in with so little quote experience and yet be able to make all these decisions, because I had the benefit of the old timer that had told me what to go on.
Yep.
What to do, all those kinds of things. Thank you.
Okay. All right, public comment. Do we have anybody in the public? Mel?
Mel Garland. I live at 101 South Sergeant, and I'm here speaking as a private citizen now. I very much in favor of the hearing examiner making the final decision, but I would also advocate. I spent most of my life advocating for or representing developers, but I've also spent a good portion of my life representing municipalities. And one of the things that comes to mind is that once the hearing examiner makes a decision, that decision can be appealed back to the hearing examiner within a very small window of time.
Or you can ask reconsideration, yeah.
Yeah, a reconsideration. But I would advocate that the city council be the next stop. That they have the appeal. So that if there is a problem, the city council has an opportunity to solve it before it gets real expensive for everybody. You know, it gets, as soon as it clears the hearing examiner and goes to Superior Court, it gets expensive. And so, you know, if the council has the ability to maybe solve that problem before it gets to be a big problem, I think that's the best.
Okay, super. Thanks, Mel. Marvin?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, the problem is today, when you have your situation of making an appeal, oh, get out your $2,500, you know? It shouldn't be that way. There should be an a simple appeal process.
Okay, I'll ask Courtney, can you speak to the?
Sure, so there.
The process as it's presented tonight?
Yeah, there's a couple of different options. We have administrative decisions, which are decisions that would be made by city staff. Those would be our minor design reviews, director's determinations, that sort of thing. Those would be appealable to the hearing examiner, who would then be able to determine if our staff followed our code. Typically, hearing examiners' decisions that I've seen reference case law, they reference our code specifically and explain how a regulation or a proposal does or does not comply. From that, in addition to that, we have the projects that would go straight to a hearing examiner for project review. Those, as the city attorney mentioned, would be an option for reconsideration, where somebody would be able to come forward and say, based off of this interpretation of the code, sometimes attorneys get involved at that level even, we would like for you to reconsider that we do or do not abide by your code. If there's still disagreement, then the next step would typically be what I've seen is a Superior Court, because at that point, hearing examiners are legally trained professionals. They outline in their decision the legalese, if you will, of why they are making their decision. And at that point, it does become escalated. Oftentimes, if the city council was to get involved, I would encourage the city attorney to speak up regarding ex parte contact, because that's one area that I think you would still be subject to ex parte contact if you were the appeal authority. So if you are the ones reviewing the appeal, you are essentially affirming that the hearing examiner's legalese make sense and that they did or did not abide by our code or their interpretation of our code. And if you were to overturn the hearing examiner's decision, that could also get appealed to Superior Court, and
round and round.
Yes, you see where we're headed.
Courtney's right. I mean, you'd be subject to all the appearance of fairness quasi judicial stuff. So you wouldn't be allowed to talk to people or have any, you wouldn't be allowed to talk to anybody about the project or have, live close to the project or anything like that. And that would apply for anything that could potentially go to the city council for appeal. Even if it's not under appeal at a certain time, you never know if it could be, within that appeal
In
period.
the future, sure. Marvin, you had a question?
Okay,
Comment?
no. I agree with the city administrator. The council step should be at minimum expense. I mean.
And that's what we're creating in this, what we're proposing to create tonight, should it pass.
Yeah, in under $100. You know, you can file it and we do need something, but at a cost to show that they have filed.
Yep. Okay.
But I'm just saying that one step when they come before the council should be at minimum expense to the citizen.
So having not heard from all of the public, my recommendation would be that there is no steps to come to the city council for appeal. It would go from administrative review to the hearing examiner if appealed at the administrative level, and then from the hearing examiner review to Superior Court if appealed by the next step. So if somebody disagreed with the hearing examiner, they would then go to Superior Court.
Yeah, because if you have the appeal to council, you have all the liability issues again and the quasi judicial issues again. It's not as serious as if the council's making the original decision. Now, one thing to understand about an appeal to council is that it would have to be based on the record that was in front of the hearing examiner, which means you couldn't consider new evidence. People couldn't come in and testify about new issues. You basically, ideally, you would get like a transcript of what happened in front of the hearing examiner, or at least the summary of what happened, and then the examiner's written decision and all the exhibits, and you base your decision on that. So it'd be a lot more streamlined than being the original decision maker, but you'd still have all those liability issues and, the quasi judicial issues.
And then the nice thing for the council members, and hopefully Lynn, you can hear this. For the council members, that this is something we're proposing to change this quasi judicial review code, and we have the power to change it back, or we meaning the council, not me. You have the power to change it back should this not work, or it be too crunchy and we don't like it. We can always go back to the way we had it before, but I think this is gonna be much smoother and much more streamlined than what we've had up till now.
I don't have a problem with that. What I have is I want to hear after the hearing examiner. That citizen has a right to appeal to the council.
And under the current, should this pass tonight, they would have a right to not a technically an appeal, but a reconsideration by the same hearing examiner. That's the way it's laid out for this.
Well.
And like I say, if we don't like it, we can change it.
The basis for typically the basis for denial for a hearing examiner level is based on some legal precedents. So they will outline in that decision why they did not move forward with approving the project application. At that point, the applicant would then be able to say, you interpreted this incorrectly, or we viewed it this way, please reconsider. And then they could reconsider, or they could say, no, I affirm my decision for these reasons. At that point, it is the legal professionals have been involved, and they are the ones who gave the guidance on the decision. And for the council to then insert and give an opinion on legally trained professionals' opinions, I think that could cause some tension.
And hopefully we won't even get to the reconsideration phase, but
It happens.
it does happen.
Yeah.
I just can't believe, I mean, I understand the thing because we've been through a couple, 3 of them where we got a really bad decision. When we went back and talked to the people that wrote the policy, that's not what they meant, but they ended up with a use that was not the intent of the group that put that policy together for the planet. And everything, the minute we start making appeals, it start costing money.
Yep.
I'd like a step in there where we don't stick it to the citizen every time we turn around.
And Mayor, if I could add, I mean, a closed record appeal to councils, usually that's only in the, the most controversial, complicated cases, and they are very expensive in their own right. Even if you don't have to pay an expensive appeal fee, the appellants usually have to pay for their own attorneys. The city council then needs to have its attorney reviewing everything and advising the council, and it's going to cost tens of thousands or more, if it's a big project that's appealed.
Yep. And to Marvin's point, that's why the code is so important. That's why we as the council, yep.
I fully understand that, I built a few airplanes. So
Okay.
I understand that part of it. I'm just saying that there has to be something that addresses the citizen. And I don't see it in here.
Okay.
Can I add to some of that?
Yep,
Thank
absolutely.
you, sir. It's going to be a process, quick discussion, of how we move through land use applications, essentially. We hope that most people will opt to have a pre-application meeting with us, where we bring together building and fire and engineering and public works, planning department, whoever might be a decision maker or at least a reviewer in the process, so that before that project ever comes in as an application, they've already had an hour with all of the reviewers to talk about what that project is and what our codes are and where there's flexibility. And then as we move through, we are working, there's multiple rounds of reviews. So we've had a conversation about, did you meet the code? If not, can it be conditioned? Or can we mitigate this in some way? We're always trying to find flexibility where flexibility can be offered, while at the same time making sure that we're advancing the goals of the city as enumerated in the code itself. So there are lots of opportunities, which tends to mean that here in Buckley, we've had very few appeals. Comes up, it does. Occasionally, there will be a legitimate difference. Part of the reason that we like the hearing examiner system is because that is a neutral third party, no skin in the game at all. The whole job is to look at the code as it's written without adding or taking away and letting us know, did they meet it or did they not meet it? Every once in a while, we'll have a reconsideration where there is a legitimate concern that that the examiner's made an error in law, he's misinterpreted the law, or in fact. And those come through occasionally. No, in fact, that was not an eagle's nest, it was a red hawk nest. And that's fine. But we don't have a whole lot of appeals because we are constantly working with developers to try and get to a place where their project meets the code and meets their needs at the same time.
Eliminate the surprises, like
Yes,
along the
no
process.
surprises is the idea. And for those who choose to spend what is a pretty nominal amount, it's, a couple $100 to sit down with us, they walk away with a pre-application summary sheet that tells them all the codes, the various studies that they might or might not need, the cost of those things with an estimate. Here's our general facilities charges. Here's our impact fees. Here's the review time and how much that might cost you, so that by the end of that week, they should have a very good sense of what can be done and what the requirements are and where we can provide that flexibility. It is always our intent to help people move along. That said, some things are more expensive than others. If you've got a steep slope or if you've got a wetland, it's going to be something you have to work around. That doesn't mean that we won't help them work around it. And whenever possible, as you'll notice in our attempt to get this code to be more workable, we're trying to provide that flexibility. And like the question that came up with what's a transfer of development rights? Well, if you want to protect this wetland or this piece of property over here, but the hindrance is that you could also make a bunch of money as a subdivision. Well, then how do we do that? Well, maybe we find another spot for that density. And there's a transfer there where the first group gets to stay whole and the property is protected. And we put that density somewhere else that maybe makes more sense. So that's what we're looking at here. But just I wanted to point out that appeals in this town are pretty rare. And I hope that they stay that way. But we like the hearing examiner concept because it allows you to speak to your constituents, and it allows us to take it to somebody who is, their whole job is to read whether or not this person met what we asked them to.
Yeah.
And if we consistently have projects that are not what we want, then we change those codes and are happy to work on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
super. Well, we'll have one more, Marvin, and then we'll have one more round. Anybody in the public? Carolyn, I don't know if you've got anything on this. Okay, Marvin?
The price is $500 for the hearing. That's what I was gonna be charged.
That's for the
Everyone
pre-application meeting.
that everyone in that hearing reports to the city administrator. They owe their job to him. If he chooses, or if they choose to say, this ain't gonna happen, that individual, or we're gonna make it really difficult for him, that individual does not get a fair shake. And we've had it happen in this city. I mean, I hear it all the time. from people.
You're talking about the pre-application?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pre-application.
Okay.
You know, and that's why I'm saying, I want something in there that covers the average citizen. If it's not in there, it's no good.
Okay. All right, one more call, last call for public participation. Hey, Emily, did you have something else?
I was just gonna say that a pre-application meeting, what we're paying for in that $500, and I'll tell you, the last pre-application meeting we had a member of the city consulting team who is being the scribe, essentially, to create that pre-application summary sheet. We had the fire chief, we had me, we had the city engineer, the public works director. If you look at the city's taxes and fee schedule and the cost per hour of each of those people, $500 is actually low. If you're looking at the fact that we are preparing for that meeting, we're giving them a full hour, and then we are producing a summary sheet. I would argue 500 is actually less than the final cost of that. And with all due respect, we attempt to never be biased. A project does not matter who comes or goes. Did you meet the code or did you not meet the code? If not, can you be conditioned to meet the code? If there's impacts, can they be mitigated? That's all. I myself do hearing examiner work. I understand that concept. So this isn't about personalities. This is about, is your code what you want it to be? And did they meet that code or not? Thank you.
All right. Last call for public comment on this quasi judicial. Okay. All right, it is 7:44. We're going to close the quasi judicial review. Oh. Let me make sure I got everything here. Okay, yep, 7:44, and we're going to start the parking code public hearing. And Emily, up again.
My squat's in today. Okay. Parking, I'll be as fast as I possibly can. We've discovered that there are many businesses downtown and many buildings downtown that are constantly reused as things come through. Our code requires quite a lot of parking for an area that has essentially been built out for a very long time. Parking is a big expense when it comes to businesses, especially in this built out environment. As part of an economic development kind of thinking, and as a way to reduce some of the costs and bureaucracy, we want to recognize in the code that most of these businesses or most of these buildings will have been reused multiple times. The other thing is that we have quite a lot of public parking spaces around, including ADA spaces. We think that we can better serve our business community in this downtown area by allowing them to count the on-street parking that's close by, the public parking that's close by. So the ordinance in front of you reduces, or in some cases eliminates the need for that new parking, or allows for them to enter into what is a de facto shared parking agreement with us that says, yeah, you can use our lots. And all they have to do is say a simple parking study, literally go out and count, are there enough spaces around you if you're building something new? But if you're not building something new, then you probably don't even need to do that. So the idea of this is to reduce the amount of parking required, or eliminate it in some cases, and to provide flexibility and options in the historic downtown area.
Okay, thank you, Emily. All right, questions, comments from the council, we'll start with first. Oh, okay, and to the public. Oh, Ron.
I would just have to say that I'm in full support of this because, you know, I come downtown on the weekend. Well, I drive through here every day, but when I want to stop, I can always find a spot. If Main Street's, there's no spots on Main Street, I think that's great because people are down there doing stuff. There's the parking lot to the north behind our west, or the city parking lot back there. And then we have the inconvenient truth is we have all this parking on River, massive parking on River. And then I've never not found a spot on A Street, wherever Cottage, Pearl, wherever it's at. And to punish people that are repurposing a building, that the place isn't going anywhere, is ridiculous. I mean, this is common sense governance right here.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron. Okay, any other last call for public comment on the parking code revision? Oh, Brandon, sorry.
Just that I'm excited to see this hit us tonight, and let's do impact fees next.
Okay. All right. And it is, that was a quick one, 4 minutes, 7:48. We're closing the public comment on parking code. All right, ordinances. Run. Oh. We'll read the first.
Oh, okay, sorry. Ordinance number 423, amending DMC to refill and replace the city citing code.
Move to approve ordinance number 04-23, repealing and replacing, BMC 1930 sign code.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Any further discussion? I think we beat the horse plenty to death. All right. Okay, Lynn can make sure we can hear Lynn for the vote. And is it a roll call?
Yep, it's roll call.
Okay.
We'll try, Rose. Lynn, can you hear?
She might be muted.
She is muted, but-
We can get her at the end if you want to come back
Okay, all
around.
right, we'll go. Smith,
Yes.
Irving,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Ursano.
Yes.
Sundstrom,
Yes. No. Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, motion carries. Ordinance number 523, amending DMC 2008-030, associated chapter.
Move to approve ordinance number 05-23 to amend Buckley Municipal Code 20.08.030 and associated chapters to delegate major permitting decisions to the hearing examiner and minor permitting decisions to city staff.
Second.
Okay. All right, discussion, any further discussion on this? Council? Okay. Roll call again.
Anderson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Ursano,
Yes.
Irving,
Yes.
Sundstrom,
No.
Rose,
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, ordinance number 6-23, amending DMC parking code in the historic commercial zone in downtown district, design district.
Move to approve ordinance 06-23, amending BMC parking code in the historic commercial zone in the downtown design district.
Second.
Right. Any further discussion, questions from council? Okay,
All right,
roll call again.
Rose,
Yes.
Ruby,
Yes.
Ursulou.
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Sunstrom,
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
All right, motion carried.
Perfect. All right, staff report, update from city administrator.
Tonight, I'm going to be speaking on the pickleball update on behalf of our Parks and Rec director who is out sick. So on our last council meeting, we discussed a proposal that was brought forward in early January for the city to enter into a public-private partnership with Enumclaw Pickleball Association to be gifted a potential pickleball facility. We discussed some locations. Since then, we've received some public comments, and this is the promised update. In the memo that we provided tonight, we've identified a couple of different potential locations. Reminder, we are looking for a minimum site of about 2 acres to accommodate the size of the facility. There was a request from several members of council in our last meeting that it be on publicly owned land. So here we've combined those priorities as well as the DSHS land just because of the size and space. I will mention that on March 13th, our Public Works Director and I and potentially the mayor will be going to meet with DSHS to discuss the possibility of amending some of the lease terms to include a right to first refusal, meaning that if they were to surplus the property at a later date, the city would be able to purchase the property at that time. So we will be seeing if we can amend the lease agreement. What I'm looking for tonight, or what we're looking for tonight, is agreement from the council to move forward with doing a public hearing of sorts. It is not a codified requirement, so we have a little bit of flexibility, but we are proposing as staff that we hold 2 town halls on March 14th and March 28th. We will advertise them as soon as tomorrow if we have concurrence from this group on the potential locations. So the reason that we're coming to you to ask is we are looking to advertise on our standard radius, meaning neighboring all of the neighboring property owners for the potential site locations. So we've identified 3, the Rainier School site, the Miller Park site, as well as the River Avenue site. For a variety of reasons outlined in the memo, we are recommending that we move forward with noticing for the River Avenue site and the Rainier School site. But if it is the will of the council, we can certainly advertise for all 3 and invite public comment. We will also include a notice in the newspaper, online, all of the standard venues to ensure that we have as many participants as possible. Again, this isn't a requirement, but I do think given the community impact and the timeline, it makes sense to do this in advance of making a decision should the council choose to move forward with this partnership. So for next steps, well, I already kind of outlined that, so I'm actually going to move ahead to the attachments. Some items that were discussed at the prior council meeting was the potential revenue and expenses for this facility, this proposed facility. Ms. Snodgrass put together the chart, and I will do my best to explain without her being here based off of some text she sent me earlier today. So any follow-up conversations or questions that you have, we'll bring back at the following meeting. Looking at expenses, this is based off staff salary rates. We're looking at about $63,700 per year is our estimate for what it would cost for us to operate a facility of this size and scope. And then the revenues, one thing Ms. Snodgrass did want me to mention is that she feels that this was a very conservative estimate based off of keeping the proposed venue open to public participation as often as possible. If you refer to the calendar put together on the following attachment, you can see that on this instance, there's only 2 days that are reserved for a private event and 1 tournament per quarter. There's certainly a possibility of us hosting additional or allowing for additional reservations that could potentially increase revenue. So she felt that this was a conservative estimate. It is based off of other jurisdictions with maybe not pickleball facilities, but that run similar type tournaments, as well as some data that was provided to us specific for pickleball facilities, estimating 4 tournaments per year. And then our last 2 attachments are an outline of those site locations. So the first one being the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2015. You see the yellow, green, and red options. Those are currently undeveloped agricultural land that could potentially host this sort of a facility, as well as a proposal that I believe, I don't think that this was ever formally adopted. I think it was part of that Rainier Gateway update, but it does just provide a concept. So we're recycling the map that shows where it could potentially be located on 410 between 410 and River Avenue next to the Veterans Memorial. This would require moving the Foothills Trail slightly towards 410, but there is certainly space there as well to accommodate this facility. Happy to answer any questions, Mayor.
Okay. Questions, for Administrator?
Comment. I'm all in favor of having these two public hearings to hear and have those within the 300 feet. That's the standard messaged out to so they could come. The requirement for the parking, as far as I'm concerned, the best location, and I mentioned it before, we have all kinds of parking on River Avenue. So the requirement for parking is already accomplished. And I'm not a surveyor, but I do believe there's at least 2.3 acres there. And the other DSHS property is in a whole different kettle of fish. But I support the 14th and 28th hearings for those two places.
Brandon.
I also support the staff recommendation and thank you for the additional transparency that's not required.
Marvin. Sumner Golf Club. Beautiful, beautiful when they put it in. Couldn't make it. Enumclaw Pool, I believe, when it was approved by 70% of the people in Enumclaw, they also pay a 0.01 sales tax to cover for it. So that's not making. My wife's a member of that pool. As a senior citizen, costs her $299 a year. None of the forward thrust pools ever made money. The closest to paying their expenses was the one in Tahoma, and it was the last one put in. I support Miller Park because that's a sport facility. You know, I do not support putting something over here on River Avenue, the best real estate in town, and also where we can draw a lot of landlord income if we do it right. So I am against doing anything on River Avenue. So if this is a city-owned enterprise, it would be subject to a 10% fee for the city and impact fee for running it. A 3.2 excise tax and that management fee that we hit all the city-owned enterprises for. Sports facilities. You see them around. We have one out here at the I think it's a baseball facility. We also have a couple in Puyallup. They're sitting on the back street. I'm sure they put a lot of hours into them. The minute we start getting into hours, we're looking at and especially with the government, oh, this will just be a part-time job. Oh no, we need more hours, and pretty soon it'll be a full-time job. And this is a city-owned enterprise. We can't put money into it. And as such, if the thing goes bankrupt, what happens? If we can't afford it and have to shut it down, what happens? Do we keep the building? Or does the other people keep the building that paid for it? You know, and I mean, access and security. You pretty much got to have somebody there all the time. I mean, every one of these facilities I've ever been to that, when I was chasing my grandson around here, every one of them has some sort of security. And I'm not talking just an adult there. And those are the kind of things, that's my question. You know, there are just a lot of answers I haven't seen yet.
Okay. Amanda,
Sorry.
no, take your time.
I am in favor of having the town hall meetings. I would like Miller Park to be included in that. I am not a fan of putting it on River at all. My reason why I'm not in favor of putting it on River by the Veterans Memorial has nothing to do with real estate, it has to do with the open space and the grass and kids playing and picnics and things like that. And I don't want to see a big building right there. So I'm not in favor of River at all, but I would like to see Miller Park included on the town hall.
Yeah.
The
Kenny.
public comment will be open to the whole town, not just people.
Yeah,
that around
absolutely.
it,
It'll,
right?
it'll just be noticed, you know, the public notices and then. we'll
Absolutely.
put
We're
something
just
in the-
gonna post notice boards on the locations identified as well as do targeted mailings within that radius that's standard in our code. So we wanted to make sure that there was concurrence with where we were doing that, since there is resources in order to put up those notices and send them out. So sounds like all three is what the council would like to see, and we'll work on that tomorrow.
And Lynn, I know we want to catch you. Do you have any input for this, Lynn, Rose? Might be muted. I'm not. Oh, you might be muted, Lynn. Okay,
Can you
we're
hear me
up.
now?
Yep.
Anyway, the town hall meetings sound great, and Rainier School would be my first preference. And I don't know about the second. I'm not sure. I think I would rather see something done in another area, maybe Miller Park. But I'd like to preserve the River Avenue for, like you say, more free, unplanned use right now. I'd like to talk more about that.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Okay, and that was all your update, the update, okay.
For that item. For my second update, I'm gonna invite our finance director, Ms. Hines, to join me. We're going to discuss tonight the ARPA reconciliation after our most recent program, which was the small business grants.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. In your packet, yes, was a reconciliation provided to look at where we kind of stood after being into the ARPA funding program for almost 2 years. So we did get the funds in 21. And council first met on that. Then, so we're at the end of through 22. This is the reconciliation through that. And then kind of looking at where we have items budgeted for 23 and kind of just discussing that moving forward. So the purpose tonight was really to just give you this reconciliation so you could see where we have spent in the programs to date. Talk about additional funding and where that could, the remaining funding and what the needs for that could be, especially with city response and recovery being a main one. And so I'm not going to necessarily go through line by line through the reconciliation, but if there was specific questions about a program, what I tried to provide was what the original plan was, the very first time it did come to council, and then kind of what the last iteration was. So not everything in between, but kind of where we started and where we had ended up. with the different programs and buckets of funding that council had kind of set aside. And then obviously the actuals and where those program balances stood.
Okay. Super. Ron, do you want to start? Was that everything you had?
Yeah, there's questions about specific programs I'd like to do. Yeah, we
This
can
would
do
just
those.
be a comment, actually, and a question. If I'm not mistaken, none of these buckets or programs are set in stone. We can change them at any
The
time up
living
until the end of
document.
2026.
Correct. Well, up to the end of 24 to commit the funds is when we have to have them committed. And then spent by the end of 2026. And so that was another reason, now that we're into 23, the council did approve some spending of ARPA funding through the buckets that you had already set aside in 23 or originally in the 23 budget, but we will be starting 24 budget coming up in a very short while, having a retreat, thank you, retreat with council regarding budget and looking at the forecast going into 24. We did balance 23 with one-time money, including additional funding of the ARPA for cost and recovery. An additional 200,000 was used to help balance 23's budget, knowing that it was one time, but also recognizing that there was that need for the cost and recovery of the general fund because of COVID. So that was what the main use of the ARPA funding was for. So as we move into 24, that deficit that we did address in 23 was some one-time money isn't going to go away. It's not going to get smaller. I don't have any concrete numbers yet. The forecast is not done, but just based on what we had in 23's budget, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a deficit in the $400,000 to $500,000 range moving into 24. So having additional ARPA money still in reserve for that cost and recovery program to continue into 24 might be one of the tools in the toolkit that council would want to use. So I tried to provide what the program balance was based on those and the balances are based on the revised plan. So it's the revised plan less the actuals, less any estimated actuals for 23 to give the program balances. And so you can see at the bottom, then that left out of the original award, 400,000.
Thank you for setting that up like that, Sandy. That's very well done. Having it where we started, where we ended, the middle isn't as important. That's perfect.
So, you know, the thought would be that because we know that there's going to be a deficit going into 24, council has discussed a levy lid lift, and that's still an option on the table. And we'll be discussing that at the retreat in April, once we look at the forecast as well, for depending on what type of lid lift, if the council would choose to do that, there's certain timing requirements for what ballot you can get on. The first one being the August for the primary. Those are due in May. Filing for that is due in May. So our council retreat would be timely to talk about that if there was a need, a want and a desire for the council to do any type of initial ballot. But those, that all plays with then using any ARPA money as well to help balance that deficit moving forward because of COVID over the last couple of years to help with cost and recovery. So if there was questions on specific projects, I'd be happy to answer that.
Okay. More questions, comments for Sandy?
Yeah.
Can you just remind me, sorry, can you remind me what the city grants matching funds public safety is again, please?
So originally the thought for that was that when we first came out with that with the 60,000, the thought was that public safety, fire and police would be able to go out and get grants to help match with ARPA money to buy equipment.
That's right.
And
Okay.
quickly we discovered there really wasn't anything from a grant matching standpoint. And that kind of morphed into, it paid for the body cameras for police. It paid for some PPE for fire, and it helped pay for a portion of the patient loading system.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
That's why the overall fund amount got increased.
Got it.
Marvin.
We've heard from White River Housing and the Senior Center. I'd like to know what they really feel they need and how it would be funded. You know, so we aren't saying, oh, well, let's get a little here and a little there. Let's just see, let's start out. I have a lot of problem with the public works facility renovation. We overpaid for that piece of property, and now we're turning around and spending another couple $100,000 to fix it up. We could have had a brand new facility for that kind of money.
So can I comment on
absolutely.
that, Councilmember
Yeah.
Sundrum? So in the original plan, it was city public works facility in terms of building on the site out by the wastewater treatment plant. That line then got changed to 0. The second line got added, which was public works facility renovation. Again, out on that site, but now it was going to be like the pole barn, or it was going to be a little bit different. It morphed. As you can see, that program hasn't started, and that funding then is available. I don't think that there was necessarily a thought that was not budgeted in 23 to be spent to continue that. So that program hasn't started, and really in the 23 budget didn't get considered. And so there was obviously White River Senior Housing came tonight, senior center board and others came talking about ARPA funding. And most of our purpose tonight wasn't to kind of look at where do we want to reallocate and redistribute. It was just to provide the reconciliation, keep that thought in the council's forefront of their mind to maybe not spend it all, knowing that we still have several years to kind of get through. But just for you to be able to see kind of what programs had started, where things were from a balance standpoint.
And Sandy, is it December of 2024? We have to have it allocated by?
We have
the
to
end
have
of the year?
it, yeah, committed.
For spending in 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be,
And
committed
And
and
26, yeah.
obligated by the end of 24.
Okay.
And then you have additional 2 years to actually spend it.
I just want to make sure it was December, not.
December
September.
31st of 24,
Okay,
correct?
perfect. Okay. Marvin.
Yeah, I think we need to take a look at the small business assistant rehab and facade, the city signage and wayfinding, the new business development seed grants, and the public works facility renovation. See, just exactly where we're going there. And because that's a lot of unencumbered money.
Correct.
Okay.
And we did why the 23 columns kind of estimated actual, some of those funds will get spent for sure. And other ones haven't gotten spent, but we're estimating. So kind of under the small business hardship grants, we know that 65,000 was used for those hardship grants. That program's closed. So that additional funding is available for council to do what they would like. But under the nonprofit, we're just getting that one started. So I kind of assumed the whole thing being spent on the nonprofit program. Since we're just going to be getting that one, we're going to be bringing that back to council in March.
Okay.
So we're just assuming then that hopefully all the nonprofits use all that funding for that.
Right. Okay, any other questions, comments for Sandy? I'm gonna touch on the levy lid stuff if there's no more comments for the ARPA. No? Okay. I just wanted, Sandy touched on it exactly right about we've got to decide by May whether we're gonna make a go of this or not. There's all kinds of issues at hand and so on and so forth, but we've got to get it in by May to have it on the ballot by for August. And we're gonna have to do a lot of public outreach. Usually there's a much larger lead time to get that public outreach and we probably want to get a temperature check between now and May.
On what?
On if we're gonna do a levy lift for public safety. If we're gonna even put that out there. If we want to do that, we need to find out if there's community support for that or not.
We
before
need to
we
start talking about it.
Yeah, well, real soon. So that's all. That's all I
April
got.
19th, we have
Okay.
18th, okay. In April, we have a council retreat that's dedicated to the forecast and
Don't
planning.
drop
for-
it on us at the last minute. We need some information before then.
Absolutely. And I believe that we've already included it on the city calendar. And then it was on your council schedule that was
No, I
provided.
mean, it's on the calendar, but like the sales tax and the cost of the city hall refurb, I got nothing.
You can.
Can I give you an update on sales tax, Councilmember Sundstrom?
Please,
It's been a year.
The contract is in process and I am getting instructions on the download of the data and should have that within hopefully the next week or two. And so then that can get disseminated
Good,
and provided to you.
good.
Not given a specific time. I'm waiting on the download of the data.
Okay, and we need to work on a different phrase for retreat. It's certainly not a retreat.
I'll bring snacks.
I'll bring snacks. Yeah.
There we go. Work party, whatever it is. Okay. All right, if we, public comments. Carolyn, did you want, Amy, either or? No, okay. No, Amy, come ahead.
I'll make this really quick. I know everybody really wants to go home, but we have a lot of Amy Boucher Downtown Association. We have a lot of ARPA questions, obviously. And I think this has been an ongoing discussion with Courtney. I mean, we see on here, I can go down the list, the Arts Commission grant, and we talked about it earlier. So now we have an avenue. We don't have to go through the sign code, but we don't have a process set up. So if the Downtown Association is working through some of these, like the policies or procedures of like the details of basically getting a art commission established. Obviously, the city's underfunded and understaffed right now. So we are here, but we need some kind of more kind of concrete, like how are we moving forward? So I don't know exactly how that is going to happen, or, whether we write a MOU, but I know, like I said, I'm very appreciative of all the support, but we definitely need something more concrete as we move into this time period, because 2024 is going to come quick. And if money's going to be starting to be allocated soon and about at budgets and retreats, we want to make sure that you all know that, we're doing the on the ground work for what it would take to, build up an arts commission. The small business facade and rehab grants are improvement. There's other Main Street programs that have done contracts with their city that have, the Downtown Association kind of works that grant through. Previous administrator, we, provided those contracts. We just haven't had those conversations yet. So just, to put out there that we are very interested there. The new business development seed grant. I mean, that's something that we can partner maybe with the chambers. I'm not speaking on behalf of the chamber, but again, we just started those business connection meetings, and businesses are again, you're talking about, we need to get public outreach. Well, we're doing the public outreach, like we're out there, we're working with the community, we're trying to build those relationships with the businesses, which is, so we really are an ally. And like in that presentation, the things that we're doing, our goals and our projects are really helping to advance your guys' goals as well. And so the other one is the new business development seed grant, the Arts Commission, the small business hardship grants. And I did have a question though, the White River Community Outreach, and then the Chamber of Commerce grant. And I wasn't sure if the BDA, that matching to the grant, I don't know where that fell, if that even came out of ARPA funding.
That's the chamber grant.
Okay, that's what we thought. And then the question is, I guess, if the city's in a deficit, I mean, 400,000 to 500,000 and the ARPA funds total the 400,000, is there a chance then a lot of these funds may not be available because they will go to pay for the city?
Correct.
So I think that's where
If I'm going to make some comments that might make me a bit unpopular tonight, but we've communicated to some of our neighboring jurisdictions, and by and large, the majority of the cities have not allocated their ARPA revenue beyond some smaller projects, or similar to what we did, for example, with body cams. And the reason for that is that first and foremost, these dollars were meant to be for loss and recovery for cities to get through the COVID pandemic. The first couple of years of COVID, obviously the economy was booming relatively, and now we are seeing potentially that outfall, which is why we were given until 2026 to spend the dollars. In Buckley, we allocated or made a plan, but what I asked Director Hines to put together was an outline of what dollars we have committed to spending via grants, and then what I would consider to be optional spending, which I would not recommend that we move forward with until we are certain that we can maintain basic services using this potentially for loss and recovery. So either we see an increase in revenue elsewhere via a lid lift or some other revenue generating stream, or we may need to use these dollars in 2024 or 2025 or 2026 in order to subsidize the general fund in order to maintain our basic levels of service that we see today.
That's a tough pill to swallow. And it's a big decision to make. So, we're all in this together. Obviously, we're trying to be self-supporting. We're looking out for grants. But if there are funds available and we can work, okay, public outreach, if there's something that we can do for other things, then let's just, we're here to work with you on that. And if the reality is we're not going to get this, 15,000 set aside or 10,000 set aside for Arts Commission grant, then we still need to work on creating that policy so we can get our murals approved. So when we come to the city with the application, what because that's coming soon. So those, and I don't know what that looks like, but I think those are things that do need to definitely get established, and we can figure that out. Same thing with the facade grants, or maybe it's not a grant, but facade improvements, and I'm working forward with some of those. But
Perfect. Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Amy. All right. Anybody else? Connie?
Okay, yeah, I was a little nervous trying to get through that first deal. Go ahead and read what I gave all of you guys in the booklets and stuff. And I know some of you wanted a picture of 165 Ryan Road and that piece of property there. But anyway, the pickleball update. You do realize we are still working on a basketball / pickleball court that we haven't even finished, which we're putting more money into. So why don't we just kind of let the pickleball go away, because we really don't have a good place to put it out on the sub area. No, big, huge building, big parking lot. Putting it on leased land is never a good idea. If you don't own it, you can't donate it. We don't own it. Miller Park, come on, everybody's been waiting 10 years for Miller Park to get finished. Everybody in that neighborhood, and I do live on Ryan, would love to see the park get done. And if we are $400,000 in the hole, we shouldn't be looking at spending it on a parking lot. I think we need to stabilize everything before we spend any more huge amounts. I know it's in the budget, but it doesn't mean it has to get used in case we need it. So that's all I could say.
Okay, thank you, Connie.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Carter. I actually live in Bonnie Lake. I just want to make one clarifying statement. While Todd McKellips, I always say it wrong,
Yep.
does own the farm that the market is on, he's not on our board and he's not authorized to speak for us. So, excuse me, the same cough. Anyways, he's not authorized to make comments about the market or us needing money or anything like that. I'm also vice president there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Nothing further. I will entertain a motion to adjourn 2.5 hours later-ish.
Motion to adjourn.
Where do we put it in for overdrive?
Hold on. Oh,
On sending out invitations, I mean, I think it's great to have 2 town hall meetings on this. But if you're only going to go to 300 feet, that's not going to take in much of the city. Is there any way to throw some in the next water bill?
Just went out.
It just went out today.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to know about it. They don't know to look at the public notice or the public hearings or anything like that.
We'll
so-
get it on the
We'll do our
website and the Facebook thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, that'd be
And
great.
post on the site and
Okay, no.
The big yellow signs will be
Yeah,
up.
because 300 feet doesn't
Yeah.
do, especially on Ryan, doesn't do much good.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks. Yep. And Ron made the motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you, council.
Go drink some vitamin C.